The outdoor temperature is minus 25 degrees Fahrenheit. At minus 25, exposed human skin begins cellular crystallization in under 7 minutes. You are 40 miles north of Fairbanks inside a dense black spruce forest, and your lungs burn with every inhalation because air that cold strips moisture directly from your bronchial lining like sandpaper over raw meat. You want to build a fire. You have dry birch bark in your right pocket and 6 strike anywhere matches sealed inside an empty plastic medicine bottle in your left pocket. But you know that the moment a single spark catches, the thermal imaging sensor mounted beneath the Pilatus PC-12 aircraft circling 2 miles above the cloud deck will register a 600-degree plume against a minus 25-degree background. In the Alaskan interior, you are not running from federal agents. You are running from thermodynamics. And thermodynamics has never lost a manhunt in human history. You look down at your snowshoes. Your breath freezes instantly against the synthetic fur ruff of your parka, forming a rigid mask of white rime ice over your eyebrows. You thought 663,000 square miles of unmapped subarctic wilderness was the ultimate hiding place. You looked at a map in a motel room in Seattle and saw endless white terrain where no badge, no cruiser, and no surveillance camera could ever reach you. What the map forgot to tell you is that the Alaskan wilderness does not hide you. It corners you. And before we go any deeper into the mechanics of sub-zero survival and federal fugitive interdiction, if you're new here, subscribe. This channel dissects the hidden systems, high-stakes crises, and closed institutions that most people only witness from a safe distance. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next breakdown. Now, let's step onto the ice. Your journey began 72 hours ago at the Anchorage International Terminal. You arrived under a purchased identity with $4,400 in clean paper currency stitched into the lining of your winter jacket. You rented a 4-wheel drive truck from an independent off-airport lot that accepted a cash security deposit. You drove north along the George Parks Highway, watching the streetlights of Wasilla and Talkeetna dissolve into unbroken black timberland. You believed that putting 2 mountain ranges between yourself and the lower 48 states created an impenetrable buffer. To the United States Marshals Service, the Alaska District is not a wilderness. It is an enclosed geographic room with precisely 3 doors. The state of Alaska covers an area larger than Texas, California, and Montana combined. Yet despite that staggering landmass, the entire state contains fewer miles of paved public highway than the small state of Rhode Island. There is the Parks Highway connecting Anchorage to Fairbanks, the Richardson Highway running south to Valdez, and the Alaska Highway leading east into Canada.
See the anomaly.
The deputy marshals assigned to the Alaska Fugitive Task Force do not put on parkas and hike into 20 feet of powdered snow to follow a footprint. That would be an amateur calculation. Instead, they sit inside heated regional headquarters in Anchorage and Fairbanks and monitor the only 3 things a human being requires to stay alive in sub-zero geography: fuel, heat, and calories. Every remote roadhouse, gas station, and general store along the highway system operates with automated security cameras linked to satellite modems. More importantly, every aviation supply depot that dispenses aviation gasoline to rural bush pilots is mandated under federal interdiction protocols to log every tail number, every pilot license, and every auxiliary fuel drum purchase. The moment your rented truck stopped at a gas pump outside Nenana and you paid for 30 gallons of winterized diesel with a $50 bill, your operational window shrank to 36 hours. Because in winter, human movement in the north produces immediate physical evidence. You left the truck hidden beneath a canvas tarp in an abandoned logging cut near mile marker 312. You strapped on tubular aluminum snowshoes and walked 4 miles eastward into the timber, aiming for a trapper's line cabin that an old acquaintance marked on a paper topographic map 6 months ago. You are walking at a pace of 2 miles per hour. The snow is 30 inches deep, dry as powdered bone, offering zero surface crust. Every step requires lifting your knees 6 inches above the grade, carrying 35 pounds of winter gear on your back. Within 45 minutes, your body commits the most dangerous mistake a human being can make in subarctic terrain. You begin to sweat. In military cold weather survival doctrine, there is a fundamental law. Sweat is a death sentence. When your body works at 80% aerobic capacity, your core temperature rises. Your sweat glands release moisture to cool your skin. In normal climates, that moisture evaporates. At minus 25 degrees Fahrenheit, that moisture absorbs into the inner layers of your thermal underwear. The moment you stop walking to check your compass, your heat production drops from 800 watts to 80 watts. The moisture trapped against your skin does not evaporate. It conducts heat away from your body 25 times faster than still air. This is the flash freeze cascade. Within 4 minutes, your base layer transforms from an insulator into a freezing wet shroud. Your capillary beds in your fingers and toes constrict violently through peripheral vasoconstriction, shunting warm blood inward to protect your liver, heart, and brain. Your fingers become wooden clubs. You try to adjust the nylon strap on your left snowshoe. You cannot feel the buckle. You are looking directly at your thumb pressing against the metal prong, but your nerve endings send zero tactile signal to your brain. This is stage 1 hypothermia. Your core temperature has dropped from 98.6 degrees to 96.2 degrees. You look around the forest. The black spruce trees stand 6 feet apart, their lower branches broken and dead from decades of frost. The silence is absolute. It is a heavy, acoustic void where the only audible sound is the mechanical rasp of your own breathing and the distant creak of frozen birch trunks contracting under thermal tension. You reach into your pocket for the medicine bottle containing the matches. You clear a patch of snow down to the frozen soil using the edge of your snowshoe. You gather shredded birch bark, dry dead spruce twigs from the underside of a fallen trunk, and a handful of dry usnea moss. You strike the first match. The phosphorus flares. The sulfur fumes smell sharp and artificial in the sterile air. The flame touches the curled edges of the birch bark. The oil inside the bark ignites with a lively hiss, throwing a brilliant orange flame and a thick column of black aromatic smoke upward through the spruce canopy. For 30 seconds, you feel a wave of intense physical relief. You hold your stiffened palms 3 inches above the flame. You watch the frost melt from your glove seams. 2 miles above the cloud deck, an unmarked Pilatus PC-12 turboprop, operated by the Department of Homeland Security's Air and Marine Operations, is flying a routine surveillance grid along the Tanana River Basin. Beneath the aircraft's fuselage sits an MX-15 HD, multispectral electro-optical and infrared imaging turret. The sensor does not see colors, trees, or snow. The sensor measures thermal radiance in the medium-wave infrared spectrum between 3 and 5 micrometers. Against a landscape where every tree, rock, and snowbank sits at a uniform temperature of minus 25 degrees, a birch bark campfire burning at 650 degrees Fahrenheit appears on the operator's digital display not as a flicker, but as a blinding, sun-bright star. The sensor's tracking algorithm locks onto the thermal coordinates automatically within 4 frames. The tactical flight officer does not drop an announcement. He does not circle low to alert you. He records the exact military grid reference coordinates. North 64 degrees, 58 minutes, 12 seconds. West 147 degrees, 42 minutes, 05 seconds. He types the data packet into a secure tactical chat window, linked directly to the command terminal inside an unmarked four-wheel drive Suburban, idling at the junction of the Elliott Highway. Inside that Suburban, two deputy U.S. Marshals look at the digital map overlay. They do not start the vehicle and rush into the forest with sirens blaring. That is what television depicts. In the reality of federal fugitive operations, deputies understand the arithmetic
Mobilize
of the
teams.
environment.
We're running out of daylight.
They look at the outdoor thermometer on the dashboard, minus 28 degrees. They look at the terrain elevation contours between the highway and your fire. 4 miles of muskeg swamps and dense alder thickets. They know you cannot move faster than 1 mile per hour without a tracked vehicle. They know you have no shelter, no resupply, and no communications. They pour coffee from a thermal thermos. One deputy checks the radio battery. The other adjusts the heater vents toward the floorboards. They are not pursuing you. They are containing you. They calculate your metabolic burn. An adult male moving through deep snow in sub-zero conditions requires between 5,500 and 7,000 calories every 24 hours simply to prevent severe core cooling. Your backpack contains 4 protein bars, 2 cans of sardines, and half a loaf of frozen bread. That is 1,800 calories total. Within 24 hours, your glycogen stores will be completely depleted. Your body will enter ketosis, consuming its own muscle tissue to generate glucose for shivering thermogenesis. By midnight, your fire burns down to gray embers. You gathered only enough dead wood for 2 hours because breaking frozen spruce limbs with numb hands requires enormous energy. The temperature drops to minus 32 degrees Fahrenheit. At minus 32, the air is dense enough to alter the acoustics of the valley. You can hear a highway semi-truck jake-braking 12 miles away as clearly as if it were on the next ridge, but you cannot hear footsteps in snow until someone is within 30 yards. You sit on a foam pad with your knees pulled against your chest. Your teeth chatter with such violent frequency that your jaw muscles ache. This is stage 2 hypothermia. Shivering is no longer a voluntary reflex. It is a full-body muscular convulsion designed by evolution as a last-ditch mechanism to generate kinetic heat. Your thinking slows down. The neurological processing speed of your cerebral cortex drops in direct correlation with your core body temperature. Simple decisions become monumental cognitive obstacles. You know you need to stand up and walk to generate circulation, but standing up requires untying your pack, finding your snowshoe bindings in the dark, and stepping out from beneath the low branches that offer partial shelter from the wind. Your brain rationalizes staying still. It tells you that if you close your eyes for 15 minutes, your energy will return. It tells you that the shivering has stopped, which feels like improvement. The cessation of shivering is not improvement. It is the failure of the hypothalamic thermostat. When your core temperature drops below 89 degrees Fahrenheit, your body runs out of glucose to fuel muscular tremors. The shivering stops entirely. A strange artificial warmth begins to creep through your chest and neck. This is the deadly phenomenon known as paradoxical undressing. As the autonomic nervous system suffers metabolic exhaustion, the constricted blood vessels in your extremities suddenly lose vasomotor tone and dilate. Warm blood rushes back into your frozen limbs, trickling across cold-damaged nerve endings. To a dying brain, this sudden rush of blood feels like intense, suffocating heat. Victims of severe hypothermia are routinely discovered by search teams with their parkas unzipped, their gloves discarded in the snow, and their shirts torn open in a desperate, hallucinated attempt to cool down while freezing to death in sub-zero terrain. You feel your fingers pulling at the main zipper of your jacket. Then, through the fog of cognitive collapse, a sound cuts through the timber. It is not an animal. It is the rhythmic, metallic clatter of a snowmobile engine running at low throttle, accompanied by the distinctive crunch of steel tracks chewing through hard-packed snow. Two sweeping beams of high-intensity LED light slice between the black spruce trunks, illuminating the falling ice crystals like a storm of floating diamonds. A tracked Polaris utility sled stops 15 yards from your camp. Two men step off the vehicle into the snow. They are wearing extreme cold-weather Gore-Tex modular gear, insulated white helmets, and tactical vests with yellow reflective lettering across the chest. U.S. Marshal. One deputy carries a thermal blanket and a vacuum-sealed bottle of warm electrolyte solution. The other deputy keeps his right hand resting on the retention strap of his holstered sidearm. They do not yell. They do not throw you to the ground. In minus 30-degree weather, physical violence is an unnecessary tactical risk for everyone involved. The first deputy kneels beside you. He does not ask for your name. He reads your face under the beam of his headlamp, noting the waxy white patches of frostbite along your cheekbones and the glazed, dilated posture of your pupils. He pulls the zipper of your parka back up to your chin. He wraps a heavy wool transport blanket over your shoulders and fastens it with a Velcro strap. He says, "Time to get out of the cold." They assist your feet into the passenger pod behind the snowmobile. The motion is effortless, clinical, and completely devoid of drama. You do not resist. You cannot resist. Your fingers cannot form a fist, and your legs cannot bear your own weight. As the snowmobile accelerates back toward the highway along the pre-packed track, you watch the faint embers of your birch bark fire disappear into the dark forest behind you. You realize that the wilderness did not betray you. It simply operated according to the unchanging laws of physics. The federal government did not need to outsmart you, outrun you, or outgun you. All they had to do was understand the cold. The snowmobile reaches the shoulder of the highway. The heated cabin of the unmarked Suburban opens, releasing a wave of dry, 80-degree air and the smell of coffee. The door closes behind you with an airtight thud. The handcuffs click onto your wrists in front of your body, over the wool blanket, loose enough to preserve the fragile circulation in your frostbitten fingers. The vehicle shifts into drive and turns south toward Fairbanks, leaving the silent, frozen expanse of the Alaskan interior behind forever. If this analysis showed you how modern federal tracking intersects with the brutal realities of sub-zero survival, share it with someone who values authentic investigative realism. Subscribe to the channel, leave your thoughts in the comments below, and hit the notification bell for our next tactical deep dive.